Hi, I'm Casey Bell, and you're watching Writer to Writer Interviews. Olive is a children's book about a girl with medical challenges. The author of this book, Barb Braendlein, is a mother of 4 children with special needs who decided to write a book to share her experiences and her insight. Welcome to Writer Interviews, another episode. I'm Casey Bell, your host. Thank you for watching. Today's guest again is Barbara Braendlein, author of Olive, a children's book. Let's take a listen into our interview. So when did you get started writing?
Oh, like totally ever, or just this book?
Were you writing before you published a book, or this book was your first time writing?
No, I have been writing for quite a while. Actually, people have been telling me that I ought to write a book since I was in my teens. And I used to think that it meant, that the world has seen some potential in me, right? Like you could be a storyteller. There's a story to be had. I finally figured out that it was code for most people, that my life is a little overwhelming to them and they would like to exit the conversation. So they're like, you should write a book, right? But I had tried actually several times to write versions of my family story or my kids' story, which is sort of where this book comes from. And this was just the first time that I went ahead and tried to get something published. But I have been writing for probably the last 15 years.
Okay. Introduce your book to us and describe the message behind your book.
My book is called Olive, and it is the story of the world through the eyes of a nonverbal, medically fragile 5-year-old girl. You experience only what she knows, so there's not a lot of names in this book. There's only her perceptions of the world around her, and my brain just flatlined. That's okay. That's what the book is about. Where did it come from? Is that?
Yeah. Well, what's the message?
I think that the chief message that people can get out of this seems to be sort of twofold. One is it's being received very much as a lesson in empathy, because you do get to experience life through someone else's eyes, and the limitations. You experience the medical world, obviously, through her eyes, but also her family, her home. So I think that there is, on the one hand, empathy, I would say, is the primary thing. But for myself, what I would want you to get out of it is that your life does not have to be normal to be good. I think that her life is beautiful from her perspective, not because things are easy. And I would hope that people by the end of this book would be able to have that takeaway for their own lives.
What was the inspiration? Is this based on true story, completely fiction, mixed?
It is a fictionalized version of my oldest daughter's early years.
Okay.
I have 4 kids that have mitochondrial disease. It's a genetic condition and it affects each of them slightly differently, but we have kind of a complicated household. And I found that in turning her story into fiction, that there was just a huge amount of freedom. All of the things that get to be too much if I write it as nonfiction, if I just write it biographically. How do you explain 4 kids with the same condition? We have 2 feeding tubes in our house. There's so much. And I didn't want the book to become about mitochondrial disease, because I feel like there's so many overlapping themes between just life, right? Whether it's a medical condition that you're facing, or whether it is just the experience of parenting in general. There's so many commonalities there, and that's what I wanted people to experience. I wanted them to find themselves relating to her. And I felt like if I wrote this as nonfiction, it becomes too narrow. I didn't want to write an informational book about mitochondrial disease. I wanted to write a human book, something that you could see through her eyes, your own life. And so it is fiction, but my kids definitely see themselves in it.
So I had another question, but I'm going to piggyback off that. So it kind of describe your experience. Like, how old are your children, first of all?
Okay, so my kids are 13, 12, 8, and 6.
Okay, so describe your experience raising your children.
Yeah. So my oldest was diagnosed when she was about 9 months old, and it was very sudden. She had what they refer to as a decompensation. She had a night that she never fell asleep, and by morning she couldn't hold her head up, and her hands would ring. She had become infant-like overnight, and that was actually our introduction into mitochondrial disease. And if you were to interview 50 different mitochondrial patients, you would encounter 50 very different experiences. But the thing that they all have in common is energy. Your mitochondria, it's the part of your cell that takes food and turns it into energy. And so energy is a common theme of our lives. So for my kids, it looks a lot like we have some developmental issues. We have issues with sleep, a lot of gastrointestinal. Like I said, we do have a couple of feeding tubes, but it's a constant. If you think about all the things in your body that require energy, it means all your organs are at risk, your speech, your ability to control your temperature. These are all things that we juggle on a daily basis. So in our particular world, it means that the first probably 5 or 6 years we were in and out of the hospital all the time. Just, it was such a steep learning curve, right? To know, how do I get this child that now needs more sleep than other kids and she can't fall asleep, right? Where do we even begin? It took us a long time to get to the point where they are stable. Now, if you were to meet them, you would notice some things, but it's not like it was. They're able to do things now. The feeding tubes have enabled a lot of opportunities for them. We can basically help with the calories. We can do the exhausting eating part for them, and they can focus on what they want to do, like learning how to walk, but Olive is definitely based off of, their lives, because my oldest, she was 6 years old before she spoke.
Okay.
So
is there a
life's an
lesson?
adventure.
Sorry. Is there a lesson in this book you would say, because it seems like it's a book about this disease and it's something teachers could use if they should happen to have these type of children, or any children with uniqueness. Would you prescribe this to teachers, this book?
I would actually. I think there's probably 2 demographics that I am finding really get a lot out of this book, and teachers are one of them. I had read a study once that by the time it proposed anyway, that by the time we're 11 years old, the bulk of our character is set. Like, who you're going to be was largely set by the time you're 11. I don't know if, I could definitely think.
Right.
I can go one way or the other on that, right? Like, there's definitely things that are different now compared to when I was 11. But I think that teachers in an actual classroom setting, but also anyone who is in a position to influence the character of a kid, we are all trying to figure out, how do we raise the next generation to be humane in a world that is increasingly lacking in humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that this is a tool, if for no other reason than it gives voice to someone that is otherwise voiceless. And I think whether we experience someone like that through a medical condition like this, or autism, or something where they are actually physically unable to speak, or I think about kids that are bullied routinely, there is a voicelessness there, right? And I think being able to give voice to them is useful for teachers, is useful for parents in teaching empathy. We need to find a way to show our kids that because they aren't saying it doesn't mean that it isn't happening behind the scenes, right? That it's not happening in their thoughts. And I think that's a useful tool in teaching that.
And last question, what advice would you give someone who has a story that needs to be shared, but they're not too sure if they should publish a book, or they don't know where to begin? Some publishing tips would you give them as far as from your lessons learning?
I think the first is that there is someone in the world that needs your story. Probably what stopped me the longest was feeling like it's all been done, right? Everything's been written, everything's been said. What could I possibly add? But the reality is, if you are sitting here feeling like you ought to be writing a story, then there is someone out there that needs to hear your story. And that makes it worth doing. Um, from there, I definitely started with having people near me read it. Personally, self-publishing wasn't the way that I wanted to go. Um, I hugely admire people that successfully self-publish. But for me, I definitely wanted an outside editor. I liked going through a smaller publishing house. I feel like it gave me probably the best of both worlds in that sense, that there is a lot of, I have a lot of freedom as an author by working with a smaller publisher. But I also got all the benefit of the editor and so yeah, at some point when you decide that, when you have convinced yourself of what is true, which is that your story is relevant to the world, somebody needs this, um, then I think you get to the place where you are okay with putting your heart out into the world, because that's kind of what you're doing when you write, right? You are inviting people to love or hate, or maybe the worst, be indifferent to what you have to say. Um, that everybody brings their own experience to what they read. And I don't think I realized that until I was published. We bring our own stories to every story that we read. And so the things that people take away from our books is sometimes entirely different than what we intended, right? And I think that when you decide to sit down and write it, that probably needs to be in your thinking somewhere along the lines that you need to be prepared that people are going to turn it into what they want it to be,
Right.
to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was it.
Okay.
What
So I
was
get to ask you
actually,
now.
what is your publisher's, the name of the company?
Atmosphere Press.
Okay. All right.
They were great to work with, and honestly, I highly recommend them. They're a collaborative publisher, which was a new thing for me. Totally worth looking into, though. They were just, I had such a positive experience with them. I hear a lot of first-time authors that do not have great stories out of their first book, and
Yeah.
this was incredible for me. So I highly recommend.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Hey, are you a writer, a songwriter, a playwright, screenwriter, author? You write articles, poetry. If you're a writer, I want to sit down and talk with you. Go to my website, authorkcbell.com, and click on Writer to Writer interviews for more information. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this message.
Olive is a thoughtful, enchanting look into the mind of a nonverbal, medically fragile girl. Through her eyes, we see the struggle of growing up without words and with a body that has to work hard for every triumph, and yet triumph she does. In Olive, we are reminded that sometimes all it takes is one person for you to never be alone again. Olive is written by Barbara Braendlein. When you buy Olive from Atmosphere Press website, you will receive a unique sticker from Barbara designed by Ramble & Company.
We are back. Thanks for continuing to watch. Let's continue this interview.
I'm really curious about the title of your book. Can you explain?
Which one is it? Did I give you?
How to Love Your Bully?
Oh, yes. How to Love Your Bully. So it's actually based on a musical I have yet to produce. So the backstory is well, not anymore at the moment because of the pandemic, but I worked at a theater. And they used to have theater companies, touring school theater companies come in during the day, and, the schools will come in. And this one time, this theater company came in, and the children got so, I guess you can say, bored that they started talking. And that has never happened all the years I worked there. And of course, I'm sure you remember when you were a child, you would hear, shh, shh, be quiet. And I felt so bad for the actors because, you got to keep going. And so I was like, in that moment, I said, someone needs to write a play for children that'll keep their attention and have a great message. And as soon as I said that, I heard God say, write it. And I was like, and by that time already, because I did children's theater, I had to, because I took drama classes in high school, and I was a part of the grade doing children's theater. I did not enjoy it at all because you have to exaggerate your acting so much more than with, adult acting. And I hated it. I didn't like it. So I was like, I don't do children's theater. And as soon as I said that, the song came in my head and called Where Did They Go? And I saw it's someone is it. They're playing tag, the children, and he's asking where did they go because he can't find them. And I just go, what is that song? And I hear that's one of the songs to the musical. So I was like, I really don't want to do this. Like, I don't do children's theater. And believe it or not, in like 2-3 days, it was written. And the thing about it was, I think I started writing it, I'm going to say 2009, but I've yet to find a composer for the songs. And so that's why it's never been produced. So fast forward to, I forget when, but a while back, my nephews and nieces were over. And one of my nieces, she likes reading. That's her favorite thing to do. And I saw her sitting on the bed reading, and I got jealous, and I don't know why, because she wasn't reading one of my books. And I was like, I said to myself, she should be reading one of my books. And I heard God say, you don't have anything for her to read. And I didn't have children's books back then. And I was like, that's right. So I immediately wrote You Are Beautiful for my first niece, whose skin complexion is lighter than ours. And when she was younger, she asked about it. She noticed it, and she thought that there was something wrong with her. And me and my mom immediately was like, no, we wanted to make sure everything was okay. So I said, I need to write a book for her. So I wrote a book, You Are Beautiful, and it talks about, noses, ears, just because you're different, nothing wrong with you, blah. So that was supposed to be my one and only children's book. I had no intentions of ever writing another children's book in my life. And I just kind of just went, I think I got to keep going. So that's when I said, but I don't have any ideas. And I thought, well, being that I have no clue when this musical is ever going up, and now with this pandemic and theaters are closed, I don't know. So I said, well, maybe I'll turn it into a children's book. And so basically, there are many different messages in the story, the musical, but the main message is bullying. And it teaches how to deal with bullies, and most importantly, why they're bullying. So you can, I guess you can say, get the psychology behind it. So the book shows you different scenarios, like, okay, lots of times, it may not be all the time, but most of the times, like if they steal your lunch or you steal their lunch money, chances are you're poor, or they don't have the food. So I say, make 2 lunches, one for them and one for you, because obviously they want food, and, maybe put a note in there, so it gives them loving ideas because most of the times when we're hated, we get that urge to hate back the same hate. And now all that does is bring back fighting and, yada, yada, yada. But if you give love back towards that hate, I believe one or two things are going to happen. Either they're going to stop hating you, or they'll leave you alone, because what they really want is an argument. But if you give them love, they'll either be, I guess you can say, be afraid of you and stay away from you, or realize, wow, this person is really being nice to me. So let's change that. So How to Love Your Bully, that's what that is. It's based on my musical on teaching children. And I always say and adults, because adults sometimes, I believe, bully more than children do. And in most cases, that's where children learn how to bully. So it's not just for children. It's a children's book, but adults can learn from it as well.
Okay, that was actually going to be my question, because it sounds like it's very applicable to multiple generations.
Yes.
So then, which came first for you, the acting or the writing? Or is this a
Writing.
Simultaneous writing thing?
No, the writing started, I was like 6 years old. The acting started 7th grade. Like that was 12 years old. So yeah.
So is this is writing how you process the world, or what do you feel It sounds very personal. I'm trying to think of the right way to ask what I wanted to know. But it sounds like a very personal story, either from someone, either yourself or someone that you know,
Um,
for you to be able to speak so clearly about it. I mean, to
I
put it
was,
into a musical is pretty clear.
yeah, well, I was bullied, but I can't say the musical itself was personal. Um, I can't even remember how I came up with everything. Like I said, the first scene I had written was them playing tag. And that's where it started, where he's upset because every time they play tag, they always pick, he's one picked to be tag and he can never win. So he gets upset, and I come up with the idea, which I don't want to give that away, because the musical has a nice ending, an unexpected ending. But I'll just say a new girl from out of town comes in to help him and the other class students to realize that even though you're all different, there's no reason to not like each other. Or even if you can't get along, not, don't come to school bullying or abusing each other in any kind of way, that you can still be civil. And so I really can't say what inspired me other than that, working that day, saying someone needs to write something. And I do have a message in there for teachers as well, because sometimes I feel like a lot of the things they teach don't resonate with them, not just in their life they're living in that moment, but even when they graduate and go on, a lot of the stuff that they teach and do don't have any purpose. So in the musical, I also have a brief message for teachers, and it's even though it sounds dramatic, it's there's some comedy in there. I threw some comedy in there, but yeah, it's been frustrating because every time I try to get a composer, it just fell through. So this was my way of getting at least the ideas in people's mind without getting the musical out there, of learning how to deal with bullies.
Okay. Is this the first musical that you've written, or first stage play?
Not the first stage play. Was it the first? Yes. Is it the first? Yeah, the first musical.
Okay. So you know what, I'm not counting carefully here. My question, I'm intrigued though, because that seems like a whole nother skill set. So is there anything that you're not good at? Because so far I have writing and acting and sports. Okay, well, you had to have
Yeah,
it.
I was never good in sports. I can track, jogging.
That is a sport, actually, to me. It's unless you're running
But
from zombies or something. But
if it has to do with competing, that's because for me, even like when I used to play tennis, I wouldn't play to win, I would play to exercise. So it was never, I mean, if the only way to exercise is you would have to hit the ball. So that, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I lost, or you cheated, or that's, I didn't care, because my only purpose was exercising. But like baseball, I was horrible in baseball. When I was in school, always the dead last to be chosen on the team, always, every single time. So yeah, sports are not my forte. Definitely the art world. Now, I'm not good in all art, but I thrive in art.
okay. So what would you like to see? I mean, big picture, ideal for this book? Obviously to be made into the play, but from there, how do you picture it? You think your nieces and nephews, how do you picture it being used in the world? What would you like to have happen?
I would like it to be in every school library. I would definitely like it to be a part of a curriculum in schools, definitely elementary, because sometimes, even because like I said in the book and the musical, I talk about why bullies bully. And even as a bully, most bullies don't know why they're bullying. So even in that, not only can it help the person being bullied, it can help the bully say, oh, wait a second, that's me. Oh, that's why I'm doing that. Okay, maybe I can get help. And so that's my thing, is hopefully to get it in the hands of children, teachers, parents, grandparents. And like I said, not just for children, but for parents to look at it and say, oh, I'm a bully, or, oh, this person at my job does this, and maybe I can now find ways to get them to stop bullying me and things like that nature. But one of the things that I noticed, obviously, in bullying, there's two reasons why people bully. Either because they are being bullied, or they, how do I say? So I was watching the news online, and this boy was being bullied, and his dad asked him, went to the school, didn't do anything about it. So the dad went to the boy and said, "Why are you bullying my son?" And his response was, "Because he has nice shoes and my family can't afford that. I have to wear these used shoes." So he wasn't really bullying the boy because he didn't like the boy. He was bullying the boy because the boy's shoes reminded him that he's poor. So the father took both of them to the shoe store and bought this boy, this stranger he doesn't know, a new pair of shoes so that he could, realize. And so that's the second reason why a lot of people bully, is because when they see someone who has what they think is a better life, or better hair, or better this or better that, they immediately get jealous of that person. And then they feel inferior. And because they don't want to feel that, they say, well, I'll make them feel inferior so that I don't have to. And I believe if people knew that, like they acknowledged and recognized that, of course, not all people would stop bullying, but many would recognize it and say, okay, there's my problem, and deal with it. But most times we, at home and in schools, we deal with bullying with suspensions, spankings, and things like that, instead of getting to the point of why are they bullying? Because no one is born, when we're toddlers, we're not bullying, and as we grow older, we're not born to do that. So, but we never stop to ask, what is the psychology behind each individual bullying? It's just, oh, you're in trouble, go to the principal's office, you're suspended. That's how we deal with it, but that doesn't deal with the person. So I'm hoping that the book itself gives people answers, not just the one being bullied, but the bully as well.
Okay, sounds like quite a magnifying glass then. I think I've asked more than 5, but this will be my last one.
Fine.
Because I am interested. Is this, assuming that, we all get past the COVID, everything, and you can find a composer, because it really does sound like a show that needs to exist in the world. Would this be something acted out in schools, like by kids, or when you say children's theater? I don't have a theater background. So when you say children's theater, for children to watch or for children to act in?
Well, here's the thing. If I produced it, it would be for children to watch, but I would make it available for community theaters, elementary schools, middle, high school, college students, anyone to produce it themselves.
Okay.
But I personally would do it with adults playing children, but I would hire 18, 19-year-olds who can pass for. But the funny thing about this, I didn't notice it until I think maybe a year or two after I wrote it, when I reread it. The children technically don't have an age. Because,
Okay.
and that wasn't on purpose. It just happened that way. Because there's scenes where you would think they're in elementary, then there are scenes where you think they would be in middle school, and then there are scenes where you think they're in high school. And I think what happened was, originally it was supposed to be a play with elementary, middle, and high school students. And there was supposed to be scenes with brothers and sisters and the older and the younger, but it turned into what it is now. And in my opinion, it's perfect as it is. So instead of me trying to break up their age, I say they're just children. In this way, even though it is for children, I could produce this for children, and high school students would enjoy it and learn from it. Okay. So it's kind of like they're children without ages, but they deal with things that all children deal with in school from K to 12. And I guess you can say it's fate or destiny, because it wasn't planned that way, but it's written perfectly. Not that I'm trying to sound arrogant, but it wasn't planned that way. Like I said, I was just writing it because when I said someone needs to write that, and that song came to my head. The only reason why I started writing it is because the song was, even though it was a simple, easy song, it was so much fun. And I was like, I got to do something with this. Like, I can't just wait for somebody else to do it. I have to do this. And so that's why I wrote it. And I remember, funny enough, It was originally supposed to be called Kids the Musical because it was about children. But I don't know if you heard of in the 90s that movie that Kids came out.
It's jogging. I was just thinking it's jogging a memory that this
It
existed.
was
I'm trying to
well, it
think.
was a rated R film about teenagers, sex and drugs and things of that nature.
Yeah, okay. I have a big
And
memory.
I said, I don't think I should call it that because some people might think it's the musical version of that film and no one would want to come see it. And I was like, and I could explain to people, but people would be like, yeah, no. So
Yeah,
that
but I love the name you picked. The title is a hook.
it
I mean,
was,
that's
yeah, it was perfect. But because of that film, and even though now it's been forgotten, and even then it was a cult film, it wasn't like a major film. There's still people alive who would go, wait, you made that into a musical? You shouldn't do that.
kind of twisted, man. Yeah. Oh,
So
funny.
I was like, okay, so then what should I call it? And that's when now, and it's weird how things happen because during that time when I was trying to come up with a new title, I came up with a t-shirt design called Be the Love Your Bullies Lack. And that's when I said, oh, I'll call it Be the Love. And so the name of the musical is called Be the Love. And originally there was no song in there called Be the Love, but I said, not all, but a lot of musicals have a song, the title of the film, of the musical. So I wrote a song called Be the Love. And it's funny how it, not only who sings it, how it worked perfectly, but where she sings it at. And so I tell you, in my opinion, this is the best musical ever. I always say if it ever went to Broadway, I personally would tell them you can only have it for a limited time because the message is strong and not everyone can see it when it goes on Broadway. And like I said, I'd much rather it be high schools and colleges producing it and community theaters producing it because now more children have access to see it. So it's definitely, it's just a great show in my opinion. And
It
I would
sounds great.
really like it to produce it, but it's like I just as of now have not had the funds to teach myself composure.
Right.
And
Have you had any thought of have you thought about trying to sell this as a screenplay or as a to a production company? Or I mean, do you think about
I actually I did two things. I turned it into a oh, that was something different. I turned it into a play without music and submitted it, and it got rejected at one place, and then the other places it got ignored. I didn't receive any response. Um, and then other than that, I have submitted it to theaters here and there, but no one's picking it up. So it's really at a point where I'm like, well, if it's meant to be, it'll happen when it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And
it's a very weird time to have anything published or
yes,
anything, right? I mean, my
yes.
book came out June 1st, and I'm just saying, like, this is a really weird time to, yeah, I can't get it in a bookstore because they're all like, I'm just buckling down and surviving, you know? And so it's not, yeah, it's different. I get it.
Well, the weird thing about it is so last year, I emailed bookstores saying, hey, I got this children's book, completely different children's book that I'm talking now, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm usually not the one who, when they say the noisiest will gets the most attention, I'm usually not that person. I submit it and then I let it go. So I called them back and I said, hey, did you get my email? And they said no. And I was like, no, I sent them a letter. They said they did get the letter, email us. So I emailed them. I didn't hear from them from literally a year. And I said, oh, well, it wasn't meant to be. So I think December, January-ish, they called me and they said, oh, we got your stuff. We're finally looking through your stuff. We want to know if you still want to do this. And I was like, sure. So I ordered like almost $400 and something worth of books because I only gave them one book. They went to my website and saw my children's books and said, we want 10 of each. And I'm like, that's good, but I don't think I have the money. So I got myself a last minute credit card and I got these books, I mailed it to them, and literally a month later was the pandemic. And I was like, are you
Oh,
kidding me? Seriously? It was
that's
like,
awful. Oh
I
my
was like, well, what was
goodness.
this? So, I mean, I know a lot of bookstores now are going online. They're doing their emailing list. They're you're able to pay online and they mail it to you and all that kind of stuff. But I haven't heard from them since I've shipped it to them. I did call them, say, did you get it? They said, oh, we got it. But then that was it. I haven't heard from them since. So I don't know where I am with that. But I'm also at the point, this pandemic has taught me to just live in today. Like whatever is happening today, that's what you deal with. And when tomorrow gets here, that's when you deal with it. Because like I said, there's been so much stuff I've been trying to do. And now it's like, I don't even care. Like, I don't even care to
Yeah.
know what's going to happen tomorrow but even when people say when the pandemic is over, it's like, but what does that mean? Like,
Oh, no kidding. Especially
like,
now as things go on. I have no real sense where we are in Washington State. Like, I don't even know what over would look like. Like, how do you unfreak out the people?
yeah.
People are so, we've had fear drilled in everywhere for so long. How do you flip the switch? Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know what it means for this to just be over. So yeah,
But they
it's
say,
gonna take a while.
go back to normal. But the question is, our business is going to want to go back to normal. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
everybody's saying that, but I'm like, well, is it actually going to go back?
Yeah. And
And
what is
so,
normal anymore? I mean,
yeah, I
we've
know.
changed our normal so much.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds to me like a project that I hope you'll keep pursuing in some way because it just
Well,
sounds really
I have
worthwhile.
to. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm just hoping at the end of this journey, I'll be able to see the show, and then I'll be able to say that's why it took so long. And then will I be? Because like I said, I didn't want to write it in the first place. So I'm like, did I do this right? Because if I wrote it and I was supposed to, why is it not happening? And so I'm hoping at the end I'll say this is why it had to happen at this moment in time and not when I wanted it. But yeah, it's been a frustrating journey,
I could see
very
that.
much.
Well, I'm going to be excited to see it when that does happen.
Yes, I will definitely. Well, hopefully I can have it recorded or something and put it up on YouTube.
Yeah,
I'll send you a
something.
link and I'll
Something
say,
will happen. Yeah.
here it is. I mean, I can do it without the music, but it's more fun with it.
Oh yeah, and musicals seem to be coming back too. I
Yeah.
mean, back into mainstream popularity. I think your timing was right, except for the whole pandemic thing. Bummer
Yeah.
to not predict that, but yeah, no. But I mean, like, just culturally, this is something that I think kids will get into. My kids love musicals. We go back and we watch the old ones. I mean, this is. So I'm just saying, when you put it out, when you find that person that can write it, it'll be good.
I hope I can.
Yeah.
Anything
Okay.
else?
I think I'm tapped on my 5 or 8 or 20 that I just asked you, but no, I mentioned I'm not very good at following instructions. No, it was great talking to you. I'm excited to learn about your book.
And that is all the time we have for you today on this episode of Writer to Writer Interviews. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. That is all we have for you today. Thank you for watching. Join us again next week for another episode of Writer to Writer Interviews.